I think what really lured me to come into college life, the whole aspect of it was starting out with a very good undergraduate instructor that I had. And I just liked everything about his particular classroom and his style of teaching. And that ultimately lured me into graduate school. I got my master's degree with him. And in graduate school, at the master's level, I really met up with a PhD mentor that I liked even better and switched major professors, but stayed right at Iowa State University for all of my training.
You know, I come from South Korea. Women usually have just a few limited options when it comes to career. And teaching is one of the few options we had growing up. So all the time I knew that I was going to be a teacher. But then once I came to this country 16 years ago, I loved the environment I was in, university environment, learning and interacting with professors, and that's when I decided to become a professor.
Well, I probably took a stranger path here than most people. My background, I retired from the Kentucky State Police, so after 25 years of service there, I had been involved in a lot of training and a lot of education with police officers. And I started teaching at the University of Louisville about 6 or 7 years before I retired. So it was a natural transition to me to go from training more into an educational field.
I was a classroom teacher in elementary school for 27 years, and my dream was always to be a teacher of teachers. I wanted to teach teachers because I felt like I had something I could contribute. In '97, I happened to win some kind of a national award, and one of the things they empowered us at that time was, what are you doing to convey what you do well to other teachers? And I think that was a little incentive for me to think about going out and pursuing the degree to become a teacher of teachers. I think I'd always done that within the context of the building I was working in. I was always mentoring and coaching and supporting new teachers, but I think I really wanted to have a bigger impact because I knew I would have a bigger impact on children. And that to me is the bottom line of why I teach, and that is that I want children to come out as the benefits or the winners of good teaching.
I actually always wanted to be one. All my life I have been a college professor because two of my uncles were college professors who really influenced me a lot in my childhood, and I just wanted to follow their example. And I know I come from India, and it's considered a very noble profession. So I thought this is a wonderful profession. I've never regretted it.
I was working as a staff attorney in family court, and I got an opportunity to work part-time as a faculty, and I loved it. And I've always wanted to be someone who actually had a direct contact with other human beings, that I could make a contribution and impact in their lives.
It was kind of by accident. I was called at the last minute to teach some math classes about 23 years ago here at U of L. And I guess at first I enjoyed teaching because there was a little bit of showmanship, being able to show off what you know a little bit. But as time has gone by, and shortly thereafter, I got into thinking about helping people develop, achieve their goals, and make it through school, because I think that's basically what teaching is all about.
I like the interaction with the students. I like knowing that I have a chance here to make a difference in their life and give them something, expand their mind. And that's kind of my focus with research methods. What I teach is the opportunity to think broader than they've ever thought before in their life.
When it comes to teaching, it's the first thing that comes to my mind is sharing what I know, what little I know, actually. Yeah, I love to share what I know, and also the nature of the courses I teach, that's applied statistics, and most students come into my class with trepidation. And I'd like to help them, with easing their anxiety, and then learn how to do research. Basically, mostly I deal with the doctoral students. So I like to teach them how to do research, scientific research, which we call quantitative research methods. And a lot of students are very anxious and very, very terrified, really, when they come to my class. So somehow I like to find a way to share what I know about how to conduct research and also how to write up research papers. Eventually, the big goal is to write a dissertation. So I like to help them with all those little steps involved in writing a dissertation.
A classroom is a place that's really different from a lot of the rest of the world. It's a place where you can, and I know that from my own experience, you can go there and learn about a lot of new opportunities, and you can learn a lot about other people. You can learn a lot about yourself. And I know how important education is. My father was illiterate. He could not read or write the day he died, God bless him. But he made a very good living. He made an excellent living, and we had a very good lifestyle, a nice home, nice cars, went on nice vacations. No one didn't know he couldn't read or write. No one knew he couldn't read or write at all. And it was just a secret he kept. And I can remember helping him in various ways. And he had a great life, a great living, but I often wonder what he could have done had he been able to read or write, you know?
I like the performance aspect of it, of being able to come up with lots of anecdotes and exercises and research material to share with students that hopefully will help them in their practice and in their daily lives to be better people and citizens. So I like pulling all those pieces together and engaging the class in discussion so that they can learn themselves and learn from each other. So I like to create an environment of learning where we all learn from each other and have lots of real life examples and application, as well as research knowledge that they can build on.
As a nurse, you do a lot of teaching in your bedside work with your patients. There's a lot of teaching that's involved anyways. So I always enjoyed that part of it as well, and so I knew I enjoyed just teaching in general to people. So when I was able to start to work with the students and have a particular curriculum and objectives and have some goals that I needed them to reach, what I found most enjoyable was being able to see kind of the typical light bulb turn on with the student possibly who sitting in the back row, not too interested possibly, and then as I'm talking and trying to go forward and drawing them out, seeing them getting like head pops up, interested, and maybe even answering a question or two, and finding that I'll be able to reach the students who are interested, certainly, but being able to draw the whole class in is my goal. Get everyone interested who's there and reach the goal, what they're trying to achieve at the School of Nursing.
I love interacting with the students, and they're young enough that you can still have an impact and mold them and guide them, but yet they're not so set in their ways that you can still have an impact on the course that they take. And standing before them as somewhat of a role model and someone who sat literally where they're sitting, I like actually being a part of their lives and helping them to get to the next phase and encouraging them and directing them to become the best them, the best person they can be.
Teaching large classes takes a very different philosophy, I think, and approach than teaching smaller classes. Now, large and small is comparative. To me, 100 is small. Okay, the other faculty, 100 is enormous. And besides the fact that it's a large class, it's also non-majors. So that puts you in a sense where the audience, for lack of a better term, is a hostile audience. In other words, given their druthers, they would be someplace else. But the university says you have to be educated. And if you're not a science major, you have some science education. So, many years ago, I read a paper written by a Purdue sociologist called Teaching the Masses. And the sociological analysis. And basically what he said was that once you get over 100 students, then the whole dynamic of a classroom is lost. So it's no longer a classroom. So anything over 100 is not a class, it's an audience. And so you lecture to a class, but you perform to an audience. And so he made the point that when you're teaching large classes, that each lecture is in fact a performance, because you've got to keep the attention of a large number of students who have no relationship to anybody else in the classroom. They're anonymous to each other as well. And so that's what I do, basically. I was joking with my wife, I say, you know, I give 4 75-minute performances a week and we're dark on Friday.
One of my favorite quotes is, teaching is not filling a bucket, it's lighting a fire. And the way I was taught and the way I taught most of my first 10 years or so was filling buckets. And now I really try to light fires, which I think really means that you have to focus on, I like to use the word, it's people stupid, the people kind of things that really make a difference. And I try to use a kind of an active learning approach. I try to make it our class, and instead of focusing on what can you cover in class, I try to provide opportunities for students to uncover things for themselves. And if you looked at teaching in terms of content, what do you teach, and pedagogy, how do you teach, and the environment, the kind of the climate within which you teach. I used to teach and focus mostly on content, a little bit on pedagogy, and hardly any on the environment or climate. And now I really spend a lot of time on the environment and climate, especially early on. More time on pedagogy and a lot less on content.
I think my teaching philosophy is pretty straightforward and simple. I think that you have to have an incredible amount of passion to be a great instructor. At least all the great ones that I've had in my career, I've had a lot of passion, because I think passion is contagious. I think you have to have a very good knowledge of your subject matter, obviously, with a dose of humility in there. And from my perspective, I tend to infuse quite a bit of humor into my class. I think that if your audience is at ease and they are comfortable in their setting, I think they're much more apt to learn the subject at hand.
What I like to do is feed off the class. And that really helps me determine how I should present material, how I should interact with the students. I want to challenge the students. Basically, I guess if I have to narrow it down to one philosophy, I absolutely love the material that I teach. And that's so critical. If I didn't like what I was teaching, I would be long gone and not in this profession. But I love what I teach, so it's easy to talk about. And then it's a matter of more try to get the students engaged with me to like it to the same level that I do. And the fact that those light bulbs come on every time I go into the classroom, if there's a light bulb that comes on and I've helped a student understand a concept, that to me is what it's all about.
What I think of is each student is an individual. You know, I have content that I have to teach, but I have to facilitate their learning. And in this classroom of 30 students, 25 to 30 students, they're all different. They're adult learners, and I have to clue into, you know, who's self-motivated, who's not, that type of thing. Who's going to get the assignments done? Who's going to need a little bit extra push in that? So that's my philosophy, is to begin to clue into them.
I adhere to the adult learner model. Most of our students are not right out of college. They've been working a while, and they all bring some expertise to the table. So I try to draw on that expertise so that they can build on it with the new knowledge that we're giving them. But I also feel responsible for also lending my expertise and my experience to the experience. So I make sure they have a lot of reading, if they have that style, a lot of discussion so they can talk out ideas and challenge their thinking and make sure it's critical. And then also have lots of examples in the real world, and then have them go do a project out in the community so that they're actually exercising the knowledge that they're learning.
You have to be sincere, and you have to be honest with them, and you have to share your own life experience with them, and you have to let them know that you're truly sincere about helping them have a better life. And if they know that, most of them are going to come along with you. And accounting can be a rather dry issue for most people. Accounting is very important, and all you have to do is mention the word Enron to know that it's important.
I think my style is mostly exposing them to a type of problem, the formulas that are necessary, when the formulas will be used, and then giving them a chance to practice it and apply it.
I really like to engage the students by asking questions in the classroom. And some students get a little intimidated by that. In the classes that I teach, there's a lot of very good pre-professional students, and they're very competitive by nature. They don't want to necessarily be called out in the classroom. But I like to throw out a question, and I love to call on a person. It personalizes the question. But I'm quick to point out I'm not picking on anybody. In fact, most of the time I don't want them to answer the question. I just want to have the question thrown out there, but on a personal nature. Of course, it keeps them all awake too if I'm calling on names. But what I like to do is throw out this question, they think about it. 10 seconds, I give them the answer.
Most of my classes have 5 major categories of activities, and I let the students come up with the grade percentages within ranges. So we'll say there's 5 things, and here they are. They can be between 15 and 25%, so a student will put up 10, 15, 20 to 100%, and they'll tell why. We'll get maybe 4 or 5 of those up, and then the class will vote, and whatever we come to as a group, that's what we decide on, so that's their class. I also meet individually with each of my students in my office for 15 minutes at the beginning of each semester within the first 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. And a typical conversation would be, how's your semester going? What are you taking? What are you majoring in? When are you going to graduate? What are you going to do? Are you working now? And then depending upon what we say, we just talk about things, and then I try to provide some time for them to say, do you have any questions about the class? And then I always ask them if there's any way I can help them. And then it may not matter to them, but I always get up and walk over and shake their hand and wish them a good semester. So that really helps a lot in the class. And I send out a weekly e-newsletter to all my classes early Monday morning. And I usually start off with something that's funny to me. It may not be to them, but something usually about football or whatever. And then I say something like, please remember this about our class. And then I kind of go through what we're doing next week, and then maybe the week after that, are there any projects to do, extracurricular activities, or something like that. And then I end it with some kind of motivational quote, and then have a great week, and sign up my name. And I know students like that because I walk around the classroom and every one of them's got it right in their notebook, sitting right there. So I try to do a lot of those kind of things.
I use basically the kind of features that I know they say an actor would use, in the sense that I use my voice, I use my body, gestures, I'm moving around. So it's almost like watching a sort of mini one-man show kind of a situation. But the point is that you're being entertaining, hopefully, to keep their attention, but you're also transmitting information, so that they're being hopefully entertained to some degree, but in fact they are being taught.
No matter what accounting class I teach, I have them write a poem about accounting. And some of them really think that's just totally wacky, but it works for most people. Now, there have been a few students who just won't write it. They'll miss the points on that one because they're just not going to write a poem. But I think it helps them relate different disciplines, and I think it helps them maybe use a different side of their brain they're used to using if they're an accounting major, for example. But we try to do projects that relate to the real world. I try to incorporate not-for-profit organizations into the discussion, because if accounting does have a moral imperative, it's dealing with not-for-profit organizations. If you're feeding people, if you're clothing people, if you're healing people, you can help more people if you're effective and efficient.
Well, it's really important to build community, and even though you only have them for 15 weeks in a semester, I think you really have to establish a relationship. To that end, I really feel like I want my students to feel comfortable if they're having issues in their lives or concerns that are going to impact their performance, that they let me know.
There's this old saying that you have to enjoy the journey. Just don't, life is the journey. You have to enjoy the journey. The same thing is true of learning. You should enjoy the process. And you might not find an answer, but searching for the answer is important as finding the answer. And sometimes finding a question is more important than finding an answer.
If you communicate with me, then we'll have a good relationship. And I want them to be that way as teachers, that they communicate with their parents and they communicate with their administrators. And so I'm really trying to foster that kind of habits in their minds.
As much as I can, when it's a situation, say, when I'm talking about Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's disease has a specific walk that a patient will actually start to demonstrate relating to the neurological changes that occur. So in order to help the students, instead of just reading, I'll actually demonstrate that walk for them in the aisle, and all of a sudden you can see, their faces like, oh, that's it. So they see it in a book, but it's not the same thing. So my goal then is the next time they go onto the hospital floor and take care of a patient and they've got their first Parkinson's patient, they'll be able to say, okay, yeah, now I understand it because I've seen it before.
My teaching is really based on a visual background. I'm a visual learner, so I suppose that's why I teach like that. But I'll tell you about something 3 times. I'll explain a concept to you. I'll tell you a story to illustrate the concept, and then if possible, I'll show you a visual about the concept.
I don't really lecture as much as I try to engage them in discussions. So I'll start a lecture with a question, and then we'll have some answers, from the wide spectrum. Some answers are really, way in the left field. So we kind of build from there on, and so that way they can see the logic that is being used in, coming up to the solution and so forth.
I'm not going to stand there and lecture with them. I think of activities that will get the material across. I'm looking for books and things all the time that help me to come up with activities that encourage engagement, get them involved in the learning process, group work, interaction, that type of thing.
I have a lot of interactive lessons in the class so that I'm not up there just lecturing and regurgitating what's in the textbook. But I also encourage them to bring in current events as it relates to our class discussions, what we're covering, the material we're covering, so that they can take what they learn and think critically when they watch television or when they're engaged in some other activity outside the classroom. I want them to bring it into the classroom so we can have a shared understanding of the material that we learn, and so that it can be applied.
Because they're adults and this is their education, I don't treat them like they're children. So if they come to class, that's great. If they'll miss out if they don't come. And I'll try to make it an environment where they want to be there and they're motivated to learn, they feel like it's useful, rather than kind of forcing them because of points being taken off and things like that. So I believe that I need to empower them as learners as well as so that when they go out in the field and practice, they have those kind of skills and feelings.
I enjoy teaching, and I would like to help my students find something they enjoy doing. And hopefully that will come out of the classroom too. They just won't, hopefully they'll learn to be a lifelong student. Hopefully they'll learn tolerance and these other things we've talked about, such as insight. But hopefully they'll find something they enjoy doing that they can do to feed themselves and their family and have a nice lifestyle.
Students seem to indicate that, one, I seem to like what I'm doing. And I also seem to be interested in them learning. And I think the fact that I try to interact with students by moving around the classroom and talking to individual students and asking questions and getting feedback. And I've started a little system now where getting students to ask questions is tough. So I started now little Tootsie Rolls. I guess a question, I throw you a Tootsie Roll. And so all of a sudden I found that the question level has increased quite dramatically in class because they want that Tootsie Roll. But again, who cares? The question is a question that probably normally would not have been asked in class is now being asked. So that not only is that student getting the information, but the half a dozen others who say to themselves, thank God somebody asked that question.
I care about the students, and I think they realize that I do, and I think that makes all the difference in the world. The saying that students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care is really true, I think. And if you really engage them and they feel like what you're trying to do is for their benefit, most of them respond quite well.
They love when I get out and I do a lot of, with my demonstrating, they really get into that. And I also do a lot of things like, okay class, everybody stand up and do this. And we do a lot of different things together where I show them different muscles and joints and have them tap on their chests for different lung sounds. And Pretty soon when you're in my class after the first day or two, you get over being embarrassed and you just do the things along with me. And I think that breaking down that kind of barrier of professor to student and having them know that, you know, I'm there to be able to facilitate their learning to become a registered nurse that's safe in practice, and that they buy into that and they want that.
Somewhere down the line, you hope that somebody will say, you know, I had one teacher in college or two teachers in college that made the biggest difference in who I am. And the joy of this job is that after they go out into their careers, they're so likely to still, you know, email you and call you. Matter of fact, I had a student come in last night who's starting on her MED, and she got her degree at the University of Louisville, and she said, you made a real impact in the way I teach mathematics. And if that just happens to one or two people, I'm thrilled. That they saw my passion, they felt my passion, and that when they were doing something that they knew was probably not best for kids, that they would stop and say, Dr. Brown wouldn't like that.
I have a very good relationship with my students, I think, and I have a lot of them come to my office and ask about future career guidance and other issues that are on their mind, and that's very rewarding as well.
I had a young lady tell me a couple of weeks ago that she made some comment. I said, why do you feel that way? And she said, oh my golly, you're so intimidating, Dr. Fell. And I said, intimidating? I'm a teddy bear. What? I don't understand this. And she said, well, yeah, you are, but you come across like this mean hard ass. I know that'll get cut.
This is my joke. When it comes to student evaluation, you know students evaluate professors every semester at the end of each semester. And my evaluation, the mean ratings are very low. So I keep telling my colleagues in the department, you know, those big, you know, guys, and you know, that you guys need to thank me because I'm there at the bottom, making every one of you look real good because my evaluation is so bad. So this really came as a great surprise, and really, I still don't believe it. So I think you guys ought to check the data.
Yeah, I tell them, my students, you know, I'm 63 years old, I have my children older than you, so when I say something to you, it's like, think of it's like coming from your parents. You're not gonna like what I tell you, but it's, as they always say, it's good for you.
I think the students have gotten a feeling that, you know, I care about them, I'm there for them. You know, if they've got questions, they can email me, they can call me, you know, and I set boundaries on those type of things, but they know that I'm going to respond. And I feel like they've had the attention that they've needed to get through the class.
I try my best to go over the material that I believe is important from the book. There's no way we can cover everything that's in the textbook. And there's a lot of things that someone could cover in statistics, the first statistics course, that you just can't do in one semester. So I try to give them the most important concepts.
I tell my students to do something that they can leave an impact, an indelible mark on somebody's life. And I really try to do the same thing to them. I try to leave an indelible mark in their life and a footprint or an imprint so that they will be able to do the same thing. And I try to model the behavior that I tell them that they should model.